If you've been on social media in the past few years, there's no doubt you've encountered the noise of men and women publicly exhausted with each other. The dating pool is trash. People's standards are too high. Nobody wants to commit. It's the other person that's at fault. It is often positioned as some sort of man versus woman rooted clash. But what if I told you there is a script that was written for women long before they were born? And right now, collectively, women all around the world are refusing to follow it.
To go to Jim Gordon's retirement party.
What? No, I don't want to do that.
You're going to have a great time.
No.
You might meet some new people.
No.
You'll even make some new friends.
No.
Reduce your expectations to zero.
Across America, women are experiencing an ever growing phenomenon of choosing singlehood, declining settling down or lowering their standards, delaying starting families even. And this is women well into their 30s and 40s, ignoring society's imposed time clock and choosing themselves instead and their own happiness. The narrative in media likes to frame it as women being unrealistic, having too high standards, and maybe even going as far as labeling her a gold digger. Men have taken the move as a direct insult to themselves. They fear being targeted for their money, even though majority of the men that fear this are not even relatively wealthy. The anxiety isn't really about money. It's about losing a dynamic that was always working in their favor. Yet the media rage baits it. They label it such things as gender wars, and people get on their podcasts to fuel this notion that women and men are no longer able to trust each other. But is that what's really happening beneath the surface? Are women just fed up with what the dating pool has to offer? Or is there something much more fundamental happening here? I'd like to present a case of two other collective groups of women who are making waves worldwide with their stances right now. Let's look at Japan. The biggest crisis facing Japan is their declining birth rate. They've done several street walk up style interviews with women there to discuss the issue. Here's what some of them had to say.
この問題についてあなたはどう感じますか？
日本としては問題なのかもしれないけど、一人一人の人生だからその人がしたいようにするべきだと思う。経済状況だったりとか、国の方針とか、あとは価値観の流れ昔と価値観がどんどん変わっていったこととか、いろんなことが噛み合って必然的に起きてしまっていることなのでしょうがないかなっていうふうに思ってます。あとは国が子供を産んでほしいっていうふうに言ってるとは思うんですけど、それを優先して個人の幸せの大きさが幸せが低くなってしまうよりかは、やっぱり個人がどれだけ幸せに人生を全うできるかっていう方を優先してほしいなって自分は思うので、しょうがないかなって思いますかね。
Countless other women in these interviews echoed the same sentiment, the desire to want to live their lives according to their own happiness and preferences, even though they could sympathize with the issue at hand. South Korea is perhaps the most fascinating case study on this that I could find. Korean women, even in the face of imminent societal extinction, still are refusing to give birth and have children. With a population of 50 million people, it has been confirmed and almost guaranteed that if they keep this trend up, within 30 years, a single generation, their numbers would be reduced to less than half of their current population, with majority of those people being 65 and older and no longer eligible to give birth. Effectively, it would make the South Korean lineage go extinct. The young people couldn't be bothered to take up that difficult burden, also citing, just as Japan, that they choose themselves and their own desires over the state's wishes. But what about the older women, the grandparent generation? What do they have to say about this?
그에 대해서 뭐 반대하거나 이렇게 할 수 없는 게 뭐냐면 애를 그러면 낳아서 키우는 거에 대한 사회적인 제도가 이렇게 기반이나 이런 게 돼야 되는데 그거를 뒷받침해 줄 수 있는 게 없는 거죠. 그리고 원래 자녀를 키우기 위해서는 안정적인 생활이 돼야 되잖아요. 그렇죠? 근데 그러한 안정 생활이 되기 위해서 이런 걸 해야 돼. 뭐 집을 마련하고 뭐 경제적인 교육 문제라든지 자녀의 교육 문제라든지 이런 것들이 다 연결돼 있잖아요. 예. 그런데 그런 걸 갖다가 뭐 해결이 안 된 상태에서 그냥 애 만나라는 거는 또
있으신가요?
아예 없진 않은 것 같아요. 네.
근데 결혼을 하더라도 아이는 가질 생각은 없다 이건가요?
네, 없어요.
혹시 이유가 무엇인가요?
그냥 제약도 많이 생기고 이제 뭐 회사 다닐 때도 뭐 출산휴가 쓰거나 하면은 제약받는 것도 있고 좀 승진해서 제외되는 것도 아직 남아 있고 유리천장이 많으니까. 네.
얼마나 자녀를 갖고 싶은데 그 사회가 못 받쳐주는 거에 대해서는 가슴 아프죠.
난 아이도 벌써 결혼을 안 하겠다, 아이를 낳지 않겠다라는 얘기를 해요. 이제 10살밖에 안 됐는데, 그러니까 이제 조금 더 바라보는 시각이 달라서 당연히 결혼하고 아이 낳는 게 뭐 한번 태어난 인생에서 되게 의미 있는 일 아니냐라고 생각하시는 것 같고, 제가 이제 회사에서도 저보다 더 어린 친구들하고 이제 일을 하는데 싱글이 많거든요. 근데 확실히 좀 뭐 자아 실현이나 뭐 개인의 삶이나 이런 것들이 중요하기 때문에 굳이 안 하고 싶다라는 게 조금 만연한 것 같아요.
I think I found that sentiment the most interesting because as a society, they've taken a united stance. You usually see, if not the gender wars of men versus women being pushed, the generation wars of the old people in contention to what the youth of the day participate in. But over there in South Korea, mothers are in support of their daughters, even if it means the end of the family line. That's groundbreaking. That's revolutionary even. But surely every woman in the society doesn't feel this way. What about the women that would like to have children? What do they think?
아이를 몇 명 정도 낳고 싶은가요?
마음 같아서는 많이 낳고 싶은데 막 일도 하고 이러다 보면 아무래도 커리어에도 영향이 갈 것 같아서 한 명도 어렵지 않을까? 한 명으로 또 충분하지 않을까? 이런 생각을 하고 있습니다.
저는 결혼을 완전 하고 싶다 주의거든요. 애들도 너무 좋아하고 그리고 꼭 나중에 가정을 이루고 싶고 그래서 약간 금쪽이 채널 이런 것처럼 아이들 다루는 유튜브도 되게 많이 봐요. 근데 제가 이제 보통 이런 얘기를 하거나 나는 아이 꼭 낳고 싶고 결혼 꼭 하고 싶고 하고 싶다 하면 친구들이 보통 너 근데 공부 열심히 해서 좋은 대학교 나왔는데 너 그런 거 다 그냥 컷 해버리고서 육아할 수 있어? 뭐 결혼하면은 그런 거 다 버려야 될 텐데 그거 괜찮아? 이런 식으로 보통 많이 되묻는 편이에요.
사실 오히려 그렇게 저출산이 더 심하게 이슈가 될수록 이렇게 나라가 심각한데 내가 애를 낳겠다고 생각하는 게 과연 맞는 걸까라는 생각이 오히려 드는 것 같아요. 이렇게 남들이 다 모두가 그 길을 가는데 나 혼자 다른 길을 가는 느낌이니까.
They have such a united stance in their society that the women who do still want to have children often are facing a now unprecedented stressor of being alone in that decision. In a society that isn't having children, what type of world or hardship would you pass on to your offspring if you did? What type of mess would they have to inherit? Who wants their children to be one of the only few in their city, perhaps state, or even region? What type of vulnerabilities does that pose on work and taxes, family and friend life, or any other imposed duty or obligation? So, what do they think the solution might be? What would make it more appealing for women to want to start families and to take on the journey of motherhood and wife then?
노동시간의 단축인 것 같아요. 한국은 정말 전 세계적으로 길게 일하는 나라잖아요. 안 쉬고 길게 일하는 나라. 뭔가 조금 여유를 가질 수 있는 시간이
일회성 뭔가 단기적인 돈을 그냥 준다든지 그런 게 많다고 들었거든요. 출산을 하면 얼마를 준다, 뭐 아이가 어디에 가면 얼마를 준다, 이런 단기적인 정책이 많은 것 같은데 좀 더 근본적으로 일을 할 수 있는 환경, 그리고 애를 맡길 수 있는 공보육이나 그런 게 더 중요하지 않을까라는 생각을 합니다.
So, it's clear at this point. Women are no longer sacrificing for the sake of the collective, especially as it relates to their own wishes and desires. Women are choosing themselves at an alarming rate for perhaps the first time in history. So what does this mean for the bigger picture then? Well, medias have been narrating this trend, with some governing bodies even calling it a crisis. How does the West respond to this trend? Well, if you've noticed, our country loves to use guilt, shame, and blame to attempt to get a woman back in line. They use the old-fashioned divide and conquer method to divide men and women over here, and they put the heavy lifting on the men who feel like it's their responsibility or some type of slight to them because women no longer want to be in traditional roles. They make it seem like she is the problem for all of his woes and that he is the reason for all of her problems. When in actuality, it is the patriarchy system as a whole that women are rebelling against right now. In America, women are the largest growing demographic of entrepreneurs right now. Look at the stats. They are tired of these jobs and systems screwing them over just as much as they're tired of the men doing it. At every stage and area, women are seeking greater levels of freedom and better quality of life. This is evident in the amount of women who, even with their men by their side and on board, are in alignment with choosing not to give birth and are not choosing to slave their lives away to a system that does not support working mothers. Women are pushing back, not just against the men, but against the entire architecture, economic, cultural institution that was built on their compliance. And that architecture is much greater than any one relationship. This is not a war between men and women. It is a renegotiation of terms that were never fair to begin with. And the fact that it's happening simultaneously across cultures, across languages, across generations even, shows that it is indeed a pattern. And patterns are worth paying attention to. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Diamond, and this is Decode with Love, a channel that teaches us to see the patterns that have been shaping our lives long before we were even old enough to question it. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know what you think. If you agree or disagree, let me know. Also, like, comment, and subscribe if you feel called to. It really does help the channel. And I will see you next time. Take care.